I got into the University of Illinois at Chicago, and it sounded beautiful, and I was very excited. And then I went to visit it, and I thought, my God, how brutal.
Sick on the beat.
That's my editor's sister, Halla. UIC was designed by Walter Netsch and built in the early 1960s in what most people would describe as brutalist style.
My friends and I refer to it as the prison campus. It feels really claustrophobic inside because there are very narrow windows and they're wedged between thick cement walls. I don't know, you just sit up there and feel like the walls were closing in and just cement everywhere.
When it comes to brutalism, this reaction is not unique. As a term, brutalism was originally an insult. Soviet Marxists used it to describe modernism as a whole, which they juxtaposed with the picturesque new humanism popular in the Soviet bloc. In the 1950s, the word was reclaimed by British architects Allison and Peter Smithson to describe their down-and-dirty warehouse aesthetic. It signified a shift away from then-dominant international-style modernism, which, by the way, is well represented in downtown Chicago, just a few blocks from Halla's college campus, in favor of Swiss-French architect Le Corbusier's expressive figurations in béton brut, raw concrete. The Smithsons also had a socially aspirant goal to create new kinds of public pedestrian space above ground in a world swiftly becoming dominated by cars. New brutalism was codified by Rainer Banham in 1955 as 1. Memorability as an image, 2. Clear exhibition of structure, and 3. Valuation of materials as found. The style emerged at a time when there was a huge need for new buildings because of wartime damage and migration to the cities. And there was tons of optimism about rethinking public architecture in general, as well as society. With its proud proportions, lofty ethos, and cheap materials, brutalism perfectly fit the bill. But there were problems from the jump. There were no long-term studies on how prefab or site-poured reinforced concrete would stand up to the elements, or how flat roofs would fare in wet climates. Clue, wetly. And then there was the public housing debacle. In post-war Europe and America, subsidized housing was being erected at a record pace for the poorest people. But too often designs were uninspired or executed way too quickly, and they suffered from poor maintenance. When crime started grabbing headlines, the buildings seemed partly to blame. After all, they were brutal, right? What did people expect? By 1970, the Smithsons were questioning the very premise of architects solving social problems.
We may be asking people to live in a way that is stupid. They maybe just want to, be left alone.
Austerity measures in the 80s meant governments were hitting the brakes on big-time spending, too. And the heady days of social engineering through brutalist architecture were over. But as pure look, the style is experiencing a renaissance among pop stars, starchitects, and fashion-conscious Instagrammers. It's got those parents' generation retro vibes, but also a provocative dash of authoritarianism. Brutalism is just the ultimate statement architecture, totally impossible not to notice, whether you love it or hate it, and whether it gets built well and maintained or not. As the author of one recent glossy coffee table paean to brutalism wrote, perhaps brutalism can now shed its sense of danger and come full circle, from utopia to dystopia and back again.